See the U.S. response to China militarizing the Taiwan Strait. China has seen the growing danger of an independence movement by Taiwan and has increased its forces to deter that outcome. To counter China's military preparation, the United States has upgraded its arms sales and has intensified military ties with Taiwan. Militarization, alongside a political stalemate and an economic independence, characterizes the current cross-strait relations. Given the uncertainty of Taiwan's plan to re-engineer its constitution, the Taiwan issue has become viewed as having a high possibility of military conflict that could potentially involve the United States. Although this issue is essentially a political one, military might certainly plays a role for all parties involved. A failed attempt to force a solution through military means would set off reverberations for decades to come. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we are N.D.P News. Here we dive deep into the world of geopolitics and current international affairs around the globe. Today's video will explore whether the United States is excessively militarizing its strategy in the event of conflict with China, and whether China possesses enough military power and capability to execute a successful amphibious invasion of Taiwan. We'll also consider whether it's time for the United States to change its strategy towards China. Thank you for joining us. Is the U.S. over-militarizing its China strategy? In February, a leaked memo from U.S. Air Force General Michael A. Minahan caused a stir in Washington as he predicted that the United States would engage in warfare with China by 2025, with the cause being a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Following this, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken canceled his planned trip to China due to the sighting of a Chinese balloon sailing across the northern U.S. and over a strategic missile base in Montana. These incidents reflect the trend of a highly militarized U.S.-China policy, which can be traced back to the national security strategy and national defense strategy of the Obama administration, but has recently accelerated. In 2021, Admiral Phil Davidson, the then Indo-Pacific commander, warned of a Chinese move against Taiwan by 2027, a sentiment that has been echoed by Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Mike Gilday, as well as both Democratic and Republican members of Congress. Many Americans believe that a war with China is looming. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, attention has turned to the possibility of a Chinese amphibious assault on Taiwan. However, few have questioned the feasibility of such an assault by China, the necessary military capabilities for both the assault and subsequent occupation, China's other options for assimilating Taiwan, and how such an operation could be prevented. The answers to these questions are crucial in determining whether the U.S. has excessively militarized its strategy and policy towards China. Preliminary analysis suggests that it has. Lessons from history. It is evident that history can offer valuable insights regarding the potential invasion of Taiwan by China's People's Liberation Army, PLA. 3 World War II campaigns are particularly relevant: Operations Overlord, Causeway, and Jubilee. Overlord was the Normandy landing on June 6, 1944, where about 180,000 British, Canadian, French, and American soldiers arrived from roughly 5,000 ships and small boats on the first day. Operation Causeway aimed to invade Taiwan with 400,000 Marines and soldiers, and 6,000 ships and small craft, but it was postponed due to the invasion of the Philippines. In August 1942, Operation Jubilee was a failed raid on Dieppe against the Nazis. Nearly 10,500 Allied troops, mostly Canadian, were transported on about 240 ships and small craft, which landed on the northern coast of France. However, the Germans promptly repelled the assault, causing significant British losses. The last major amphibious operation was Incheon, which took place during the Korean War in late 1950. During the 1991 Iraq War, the U.S. Marines requested an amphibious assault within the Gulf, which was deemed too perilous and therefore denied. The Marines were instead employed as a decoy force. Given the prevalence of precision weapons and pervasive surveillance today, any amphibious operations would be even more challenging and costly. Does China currently have the military capability, power, and capacity, numbers, to successfully carry out an amphibious assault on Taiwan? the current state and potential capabilities of the People's Liberation Army (PLA) to conduct large-scale amphibious operations remains uncertain. However, it is known that China's Navy possesses around 30,000 Marines and a combined 70 large amphibious ships. Additionally, China is currently building a third helicopter assault ship that is reportedly capable of carrying approximately 900 Marines. Taking all of these ships into account, it is estimated that they could potentially carry between 15 to 30,000 Marines. In addition to their naval forces, the PLA also has 6 Army amphibious combined arms brigades, consisting of approximately 24 to 30,000 troops, as well as up to 15 Special Operations (SOF) brigades. However, deploying SOF across the Taiwan Straits in helicopters poses logistical challenges due to the distance and uncertain weather conditions. While it is plausible that China's large shipbuilding industry could produce the thousands of smaller landing craft needed for an amphibious assault, the transition would be time-consuming, expensive, and difficult to conceal due to the focus on building larger vessels. From a Chinese perspective, a full-scale invasion of Taiwan is considered a worst-case scenario. Instead, China may choose to exert pressure on Taiwan through blockades, economic sanctions, and taking small offshore islands as leverage. Additionally, the PLA may seek to influence internal Taiwanese politics in order to effect change. If China were to attempt a traditional amphibious assault on Taiwan, it would face numerous obstacles. Taiwan's geography is not ideal for amphibious operations, as it lacks the long beaches found in places like Normandy and Luzon. There are only a few landing sites available on the west coast of Taiwan, and the island is mostly covered by mountainous terrain, with peaks reaching up to 10,000 feet above sea level. While Taiwan does not actively train for guerrilla warfare, this difficult terrain would be well suited for it. Furthermore, Taiwan lacks the necessary infrastructure to accommodate hundreds of thousands of invading troops and support their logistical needs, with most resources having to come from the mainland. Therefore, it can be concluded that China currently lacks both the military capability, power, and capacity, numbers, to successfully carry out an opposed PLA amphibious assault on Taiwan. Now, if you've enjoyed the video so far, but haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button and join the N.D.P news family. Is it time for the US to shift its news strategy? From 2017 to 2019, the Naval War College conducted a project named Breaking the Mold that examined different ways to implement the National Defense Strategy, NDS. The project proposed a mobile maritime and porcupine defense for Taiwan, in collaboration with allies in the Indo-Pacific region. The mobile maritime strategy aims to confine the PLA within the first island chain from Japan, through Taiwan to Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. By blockading China, denying access to overseas supplies, and cutting off its belt and road outposts, China would suffer the same fate as Japan in World War II in the Pacific. If Taiwan adopts a porcupine defense that makes a PLA invasion too costly, the US would not have to allocate as many resources to deter and prepare for the contingency. If China is incapable of an opposed entry invasion of Taiwan, and Taiwan can prevent such an invasion through its porcupine defense, what would be the consequences for US strategy? If Taiwan is not the immediate or even long-term danger spot the US believes it is, then is it time to ask if US strategy towards China has become overly militarized? The process of demilitarization. The deteriorating relationship between China and the United States, particularly with regards to Taiwan, has heightened concerns of a potential world war. Rather than exploring avenues for improving diplomatic ties or reducing tensions, the focus has shifted towards the likelihood of a Taiwan-centered scenario. This has led to an increase in the US emphasis on defense as its de facto policy. While this approach is understandable, it has led to an excessive militarization of US strategy at the expense of other options. During the Cold War, the US viewed China as an adversary, fighting a war against them in Korea, and believing that the People's Republic of China, PRC, was the surrogate enemy in Vietnam. However, the Nixon administration changed this with its triangular politics, aimed to offset the Soviet Union, and culminated in President Nixon's landmark visit to China in 1972. The United States must conduct a major review of its China policy to determine whether it has become excessively militarized and to identify alternative strategies. Additionally, the U.S. must consider positive steps that can be taken to foster mutually beneficial relations with China. Historically, the U.S. has often resorted to military force as its first option, rather than a last resort. It's crucial to avoid repeating this mistake and to refrain from prematurely identifying China as the greatest threat to the U.S. and its allies. The Congressional Executive Commission on China could play a pivotal role in shaping a comprehensive strategy to address this issue. The commission should assess whether the U.S. has become over-militarized in its response to China, and if so, to what extent. It should also explore whether Russia should be the centerpiece for U.S. military thinking and strategy. I know you found the video engaging because you watched it all the way to the end. Please subscribe and let us know any specific events you would like us to cover. Thanks for watching. This has been N.D.P News, signing off.